All right, so today we're diving into this game, this phenomenon really, called Comedy Night on Steam. We've got excerpts from this article, and the title kind of says it all, Comedy Night on Steam, a deep dive into the wildest open mic experience.
Yeah, you're not kidding. Wild is a pretty good way to put it.
Basically, it's like, think of your typical open mic night, but then just crank up the weirdness and the unpredictability to like 11.
Oh, yeah. It's just definitely got that going on.
And it all takes place online, of course, on Steam, which adds another layer of, I don't know, digital mayhem to the whole thing.
Right.
This game, it came out back in 2017, made by this small indie studio called Lighthouse Games Studio.
Yeah, Lighthouse Game Studio. They seem to have a knack for creating these platforms for, shall we say, unfiltered expression.
From what I've read, the basic premise of the game is pretty straightforward. You can choose to be a comedian, a musician, or, well, the article isn't sugar-coated. Sometimes it's just people who are there to cause chaos.
And the audience. Well, they're players, too, and they get to vote on who stays on stage. So you can imagine how that can go.
Exactly. So amidst all the chaos, the article mentions how every now and then you might actually stumble across some real comedic talent in the game, you know?
Oh, right. Like someone who's actually trying out new material, working on their bits, or someone who can do a spot-on celebrity impression.
Kind of like, panning for gold. You have to sift through a lot of dirt to find those little nuggets of brilliance.
And those moments, those unexpected bursts of authenticity, that's part of what makes comedy nights so fascinating.
It's like finding a diamond in the rough.
Exactly. And it keeps you coming back for more, even though you know you're probably going to encounter more, let's call it unconventional performances along the way.
Well, yeah, the article definitely doesn't shy away from describing the more chaotic side of comedy night. The players screaming into their mics, blasting random music, just a cacophony of digital noise.
It's like the internet's version of a sensory overload.
And what's really interesting is how the article highlights that players frequently vote in favor of the chaos over anything even remotely resembling order or decency.
Yeah, there's something about comedy night that seems to, actively encourage or maybe even reward the most outrageous, over-the-top behavior.
It really makes you wonder, what is it about this game that brings that out in people? Is it that we're all just drawn to spectacle? Or is there something deeper at play, like a need to escape from the everyday, to rebel against the usual social norms we see online?
That's a really good question. And I think it might be a combination of factors, to be honest. There's definitely an element of escapism involved, for sure. After all, where else can you witness someone dressed as a giant banana singing off-key opera while a troll in the chat is spamming emojis? That's just not something you see every day.
That's a pretty vivid image.
But I also think it speaks to this, desire for control, or at least the illusion of control, in a digital world where we often feel, powerless. In comedy night, the audience has the power, even if it's just temporary, to decide who gets the spotlight.
And they choose chaos.
It's as if they're saying, look, we may not be able to control what happens in the real world, but here, in this virtual space, we can let loose, embrace the absurd, and just let things get completely out of hand.
Which brings us to something the article calls Comedy Night's infamous racism problem.
Yeah, that's something we can't ignore. The game's unfiltered nature, combined with, let's face it, a pretty noticeable lack of moderation, created an environment where offensive language and behavior were allowed to flourish.
And the article is pretty clear. It wasn't just a few isolated incidents. This was a pervasive issue that the developers never really addressed effectively.
Right, and it raises some serious questions about the responsibility of game developers to create spaces that are, inclusive and safe for everyone, even when those spaces are meant to be, wild and unpredictable.
Absolutely. And it's a stark reminder that even in a seemingly lighthearted game, even one built around humor, there's always the potential for harm, especially when you have a platform that allows for unmoderated expression, And it's not just about the hateful language either.
Right. The article also mentions how, despite the game being rated M for mature, there are clearly kids being exposed to all of this, which adds another layer of complexity.
It paints a pretty wild picture,
Yeah.
Imagine a 9-year-old yelling inappropriate things alongside someone in a pumpkin mask, belting out a Starbucks-themed parody song.
It's a surreal and honestly, at times, pretty unsettling landscape.
Unsettling, yeah. But also, and I know this sounds strange, but also kind of funny.
Oh, I totally get it. It's like that feeling you get when you see a car crash in slow motion.
Yeah.
You know it's bad, you shouldn't be watching, but you just can't look away.
Exactly. It's that mix of cringe and fascination that makes comedy nights so hard to define. And The player reviews that the article quotes, they really capture that darkly humorous tone.
Oh, for sure. One review describes it as an absolute masterpiece if you enjoy watching society collapse in real time.
That's perfect. I love that.
And another one compares it to an open mic night hosted in an insane asylum.
Yeah, that about sums it up. So on one hand, we have this completely chaotic landscape. And then on the other hand, we have the developers, Lighthouse Games Studio, this small indie studio that seemed to take a very hands-off approach to their creation.
It's almost as if they built this stage, set up the microphones, and then just stepped back to watch the pandemonium unfold.
No updates, very minimal moderation, no new features.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, did they abandon the game or are they just fascinated by the chaos they unleashed?
That is a great question. It adds a whole layer of mystery to the whole thing, right? Are they indifferent or are they secretly conducting some kind of bizarre social experiment?
The article sums it up perfectly, and I'm just going to quote it directly here. Comedy night is like a drunken open mic night at the worst dive bar in existence.
That is spot on. It really captures that chaotic, cringeworthy, but somehow still appealing nature of the game.
It's like you wouldn't necessarily recommend it to everyone, but you can't deny that it's a unique experience.
Definitely unique. And it definitely makes you think. It's funny. You've got this game with a really simple concept, right?
Yeah.
Get on stage, try to make people laugh, basic open mic stuff. But somehow it ends up being this warped mirror reflecting all these weird parts of online behavior, the good, the bad, and yeah, let's be real, mostly the bad.
Yeah, it's like the developers, maybe without meaning to, stumble onto this way to tap into the pure, unfiltered id of the internet. What happens when you strip away all those social rules, the niceties, and just let people, be themselves?
And in the case of Comedy Night, well, a lot of the time what you get is a lot of yelling, some jokes that are so bad they're almost good, and musical performances that you'll try very hard to forget. But I think it also shows us something we see a lot online, this constant tension. On the one hand, people wanting to connect, to find others who get them, and on the other hand, this urge to just tear everything down, create chaos.
Right. You'll have these aspiring comedians. They genuinely want to make people laugh, to connect with that audience. They're putting themselves out there. And then you've got the other side, the folks who are all about disrupting, provoking, pushing those boundaries to see how much they can get away with.
And it's fascinating how the audience, the ones who are voting, they seem to be into both, maybe even more into the chaos.
It's like, what's that book? Lord of the Flies, but digital. And instead of a conch shell, they're all fighting for the mic.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. And it makes you think about this question the article brings up, which is super relevant, right? In a world where we're online more and more, what does a game like Comedy Night say about the whole state of online culture,
Yeah, is it just harmless fun? A way to blow off steam, even if it gets a little messy? Or is it like a symptom of something darker, something we need to be paying more attention to?
I think it's got to be a mix of both, We need spaces for people to be themselves, let loose, even if that means things get a little wild. But we also got to recognize that those spaces can make the bad stuff louder, negativity, toxicity, things that can really hurt people.
Especially with, not much moderation happening and younger players mixed in who might not really get what they're seeing and hearing. You put all that together, it's like a recipe for, a situation that could get out of control pretty quickly.
Exactly. It's a complicated issue, not an easy answer. And I think the article does a good job showing both sides, the humor and then, the possible downsides of letting it all hang out online.
So, going back to how the article wraps things up, that final verdict, Comedy Night is like a drunken open mic night at the worst dive bar in existence.
It really nails it, don't you think? You're going to see some stuff that'll make you cringe, guaranteed. But there's also that chance you'll find those hidden gems, those moments of actual comedy shining through all the absurdity. And sometimes, maybe we all need a dose of that absurd, that ridiculousness, just to remember that the internet is a very strange and wonderful place. It almost makes you think, does this game say more about us than it does about the game itself?
Whoa, that's deep. But yeah, I see what you mean.
Are we the ones who are really the comedy night here? You've got the players, the audience, even the developers just watching it all happen.
It's like they created this space, this platform for chaos, and then they kind of just stepped back.
Right, and it makes you wonder, are they the ones responsible? Or is it the players? Or maybe it's all of us,
Comedy Night just gives you the setting. What you do with it, that's on you. Like a giant digital Rorschach test. whatever you're looking for, you'll probably find it there.
If you want a good laugh, sure, you might find that. But if you're looking for something something a little darker, well, you'll find that too.
Which brings us back to that question the article asks, that big one. In a world that's more and more online, what does a game like Comedy Night tell us about online culture, about ourselves? Is it just people blowing off steam? Or is it something more like, I don't know, a warning sign?
The big question, right. No easy answer to that one. But I think just talking about it, having this conversation, shows how much this game makes you think.
It goes beyond just a game, right?
Yeah.
It gets you thinking about how we all act online, how we interact, and where it's all headed.
Exactly. And that's what I love about these deep dives, you know? We go beyond just talking about the game itself. It's about what it all means, what it says about us.
So, to everyone listening out there, next time you're online exploring those weird corners of the internet, remember Comedy Night. It's a reminder that even in those chaotic, messy, sometimes even bad parts of the digital world, there are things to learn, questions to ask, and conversations we need to have. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.